There's a disturbing truth most people will never discover about mirrors, and the few who do will never look at their reflection the same way again. Watch an enlightened man for just one day, and you'll notice something strange. He avoids mirrors like they carry a curse. But here's what will shock you. It's not what you think. When a man begins to see clearly, he stops looking for himself in reflective surfaces, not because he's afraid of what he might find, but because he's discovered something so profound, it changes everything. He no longer needs a mirror to know who he is. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this simple realization could be the key to a freedom you never knew existed. Most people spend their lives checking their reflection, adjusting their appearance, seeking confirmation in the image looking back at them. They stand before mirrors multiple times a day, measuring their worth through what they see. But here's what they don't realize. Every time they look in that mirror, they're participating in the greatest deception ever created. A lie so convincing that 99% of humanity never questions it. But an enlightened man has learned something different. He's realized that the person in the mirror isn't him at all. It's just an image, a temporary arrangement of light and shadow that changes with every passing moment. And this is just the beginning of what he's discovered. He doesn't avoid mirrors out of vanity or fear. He simply no longer finds them necessary. The face he sees isn't permanent. The body isn't fixed. Even the thoughts behind the eyes are constantly flowing, shifting, becoming something new. So why attach to any of it? He's discovered that searching for himself in a reflection is like trying to catch water with his hands. The harder he grasps, the more it slips away. If you're still watching, comment below mirror and let me know. Have you ever noticed how often you check your reflection in a single day? The number might surprise you. People notice this shift, though they can't quite name it. They see that he no longer checks his appearance compulsively. He doesn't adjust his hair before entering a room. He doesn't glance at store windows to catch a glimpse of himself walking by. This isn't neglect. It's freedom. He stopped confusing his identity with his image. And once that confusion ends, the mirror loses its power over him. But wait, there's something even more disturbing about mirrors that most people never consider. Something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about your own reflection. The enlightened man understands something most people never consider. The person you see in the mirror is not you. It's a reversed image, a backwards version that exists nowhere in reality. Think about that for a moment. Others never see you the way you see yourself in that reflection. Even photographs capture something different. Every angle, every lighting condition, every moment in time presents a different version. So which one is real? Which one is you? He's realized the answer is none of them, and all of them, and something beyond all of them entirely. This revelation leads to something most people aren't prepared for. The mirror shows him a face, but he is the one looking. It shows him a body, but he is the awareness inside it. It shows him an image, but he is the space in which that image appears. This understanding changes everything. He no longer seeks validation from his reflection because he knows it's not showing him anything true about who he really is. The mirror can show him if his shirt is wrinkled or if there's food in his teeth. Practical things. But it cannot show him his essence, his being, his actual self, that exists beyond form, beyond image, beyond anything a mirror could ever reflect. And here's where it gets really interesting. Watch how people interact with mirrors and you'll see something revealing. They make faces, practice expressions, try on different personas. They're not just looking, they're performing. Even when no one else is watching, they're rehearsing for life, trying to figure out which version of themselves to present to the world. But what if I told you this performance is the very thing keeping you trapped? The enlightened man has stopped this performance because he's realized it was never necessary. He doesn't need to practice being himself. He simply is. He doesn't need to check if he looks spiritual enough, confident enough, attractive enough. He's understood that enough is a concept that exists only in the mind, not in reality. In reality, he is exactly what he is in each moment. No more, no less. The mirror cannot add to that or subtract from it. This freedom is subtle but profound. He moves through the world without the constant mental chatter about appearance, without the unconscious adjustments and corrections, without the subtle performance that most people never realize they're giving. If this resonates with you, hit the follow button, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how this mirror obsession is secretly controlling your entire life. Others might interpret this as carelessness or lack of self-awareness. They're wrong on both counts. He's more aware than ever, just not of the things they think matter. He's aware of the wind on his skin, The feeling of his feet touching the ground, the breath moving in and out of his body. He's aware of the space around him, the sounds, the silence between the sounds. But he's no longer aware of how he looks to others because he's discovered something more important, how he feels from within, and this is where the story takes a disturbing turn. The mirror addiction runs deeper than most people realize. It's not just about checking appearance. It's about checking existence. Am I still here? Do I still look like me? Am I real? These questions arise from a fundamental uncertainty about identity. Who am I if not this face, this body, this image? But here's the shocking truth the enlightened man discovered. The enlightened man has answered that question, not through thinking but through direct experience. He knows who he is without needing visual confirmation. He is the awareness that notices the face in the mirror. He is the consciousness that observes the body. He is the space in which all experiences appear and disappear. This knowing doesn't come from philosophy or belief. It comes from a direct recognition that happens when the mind stops grasping for external proof of existence. Once this recognition occurs, mirrors become optional, useful for practical purposes, but no longer necessary for identity confirmation. The enlightened man has found the source of his confidence, and it has nothing to do with how he looks. But what happens next will challenge everything you believe about reality. There's something profound that happens when you stop seeking yourself in reflections. You start finding yourself everywhere else, in the eyes of others, not as judgment of your appearance, but as recognition of your being. In nature, not as comparison to your form, but as connection to your essence. In silence, not as absence of image, but as presence of truth. The mirror had become a barrier between him and reality, a stopping point where he would pause to check, adjust, and judge. Now he moves through life without these interruptions. He doesn't need to see himself to know himself. He doesn't need to check his image to confirm his existence. He doesn't need external validation because he's found internal validation, or rather, he's moved beyond the need for validation altogether. Comment awakening if you're starting to see the illusion for what it really is. This isn't spiritual bypassing or denial of the physical world. He still maintains basic hygiene and dresses appropriately for situations. But these actions come from practical consideration, not from identity attachment. He separated the practical from the psychological. The mirror serves its function when needed, but it no longer serves his ego. People who still depend on mirrors for identity confirmation find his behavior puzzling. They can't understand how someone can care so little about their appearance yet seem so at peace with themselves. They're seeing the result of inner work they haven't done yet. The freedom that comes from knowing yourself as something beyond form, beyond image, beyond anything that can be reflected. But here's what nobody talks about. The moment you truly understand what I'm about to share, everything changes. Your entire relationship with yourself, with others, with reality itself. The enlightened man understands that everything in the mirror is temporary. The face ages, the body changes, the expressions shift, but the one looking remains constant. That constancy is what he's identified with, not the changing reflection but the unchanging witness of it. This is why he no longer seeks himself in mirrors. He's found himself in the only place he ever really existed, in the awareness that is present before the mirror, during the looking and after the reflection disappears. He's discovered that he is not the image in the glass. He is the space in which all images appear. He is not the reflection. He is the light that makes reflection possible. And once you know yourself as that light, you no longer need mirrors to remind you that you exist. You know it directly, immediately, without mediation. This is the deepest freedom. Not from responsibility or consequences, but from the exhausting task of constantly checking, adjusting, and confirming an identity that was never real to begin with. The mirror becomes just another object in the room. Useful when needed, ignored when not. No different from a chair or a lamp or any other tool. It no longer holds power over him because he no longer gives it power. He no longer seeks truth in reflections because he's found truth in recognition. The recognition of what he's always been. Beyond form, beyond image, beyond anything a mirror could ever show. If you're feeling this shift happening within you as you watch, let me know in the comments. Write recognition below. But this journey away from mirrors wasn't immediate. It happened gradually, like everything profound does. First came the questions, simple ones that most people never think to ask. Why do I check my reflection so often? What am I looking for? What am I hoping to find? At first he assumed it was vanity, the desire to look good, to present well, to be attractive to others. But as he watched himself more closely, he noticed something deeper, something that will disturb you once you see it. He wasn't just checking his appearance. He was checking his existence, Each glance in the mirror was a small attempt to confirm that he was still there, still real, still the person he thought he was. It was a form of psychological reassurance that had become so automatic he'd never questioned it. But once he started questioning, the whole structure began to crumble. He noticed how his mood could change based on what he saw in the mirror. A bad hair day could affect his entire sense of self. An unflattering angle could make him doubt his worth. This seemed absurd when he really looked at it. How could his essential being be so dependent on reflected light? How could who he truly was be so fragile that it could be shaken by shadows and angles? The more he observed this pattern, the more ridiculous it became. And then he discovered something that changed everything. He started to see mirrors everywhere, not just the obvious ones. Store windows, car doors, computer screens when they went dark, even puddles on the street. Countless opportunities to check and recheck, to seek and reseek some confirmation that couldn't be found. He began to understand that the modern world is designed around reflection, not just literal mirrors but metaphorical ones. Social media profiles, other people's opinions, achievements, and failures reflected back through comparison. Everything became a mirror if you let it. And most people let everything be a mirror. They see themselves reflected in their job titles, their relationships, their possessions, their accomplishments. They check these mirrors as compulsively as they check the glass ones. But what if all of these reflections were equally unreliable? What if none of them showed the truth about who you really are? Follow for more insights like this, because what I'm about to reveal will show you how to break free from all forms of psychological mirrors. This question led him deeper. If he wasn't his reflection, then what was he? If he wasn't his image, then what remained? The search for an answer to this question changed everything. Because the answer couldn't be found in any mirror, literal or metaphorical. It could only be found by looking away from reflections entirely. He had to stop seeking himself in external confirmations and start recognizing what was already present, already knowing, already aware, right where he was. This wasn't a philosophy he adopted. It was a recognition that happened. Like suddenly seeing a hidden image in one of those optical illusion pictures. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. He recognized that he was the awareness in which all reflections appeared. Not the content of awareness, but awareness itself. This awareness doesn't age when the face ages. It doesn't change when the body changes. It doesn't fluctuate when moods fluctuate. It remains constant, present, unchanging, regardless of what appears within it. When this recognition stabilized, the compulsion to check mirrors simply vanished. Not through effort or discipline, but through irrelevance. Why would you need to check a reflection of something you're not? It would be like looking in a mirror to see the sky. The mirror can't contain the sky, can't reflect its vastness, can't show its essence. The sky is too big, too fundamental, too present to be captured in any reflection. Similarly, what he truly was had become too present, too obvious, too immediate to require confirmation through images. And here's where the story gets really interesting. The people around him started to notice changes, though they couldn't articulate what was different. He seemed more present somehow, more solid, less concerned with impression management. Women particularly noticed this shift. There's something attractive about a man who doesn't constantly check himself, who doesn't seem to need external validation, who moves through the world with quiet confidence that isn't dependent on appearance. But he wasn't trying to be attractive. He wasn't cultivating an image of confidence. He had simply stopped the exhausting work of constantly monitoring and adjusting his self-presentation. This created space for something else to emerge, a natural ease, a genuine presence, an authentic way of being that couldn't be manufactured or performed. Others sensed this authenticity even if they couldn't name it. They felt more relaxed around him because he wasn't performing for them. He wasn't checking their reactions to adjust his behavior. He was simply present with whatever was happening. Comment presence if you can feel the difference between performance and authentic being. This presence is what people actually find attractive, though they often confuse it with physical appearance. They think someone is attractive because of how they look, when actually they're responding to how present that person is, how comfortable they seem in their own skin. The enlightened man had found this comfort not through improving his appearance, but through recognizing that he was never his appearance to begin with. He discovered that the peace people sense around him comes from his lack of internal conflict about identity. He's not fighting with himself about how he should look or be. He's not divided between who he thinks he is and who he thinks he should be. This integration is rare. Most people live in constant tension between their self-image and their idealized self. They're always trying to close the gap between how they see themselves and how they want to be seen. This effort is exhausting and ultimately futile because it's based on the false premise that you are your image. It's like trying to improve a reflection by adjusting the mirror instead of what's being reflected. But here's the most shocking part of this entire revelation. He had stopped this futile effort not through giving up, but through recognizing its impossibility. You can't improve what isn't real. You can't perfect what doesn't exist. The image in the mirror is just light and shadow. It has no substance, no reality beyond the moment it appears. Trying to perfect it is like trying to improve a cloud by staring at it. But when people ask him about this shift, he finds it difficult to explain. How do you describe the absence of a problem someone doesn't realize they have? How do you point to freedom from something people consider normal and necessary? He often says nothing at all. Not because he doesn't want to help, but because explanations tend to create new concepts to identify with. And concepts, even spiritual ones, are just more mirrors. The truth he's found can't be reflected because it's what makes reflection possible. It can't be seen because it's what's doing the seeing. It can't be found because it was never lost. Instead, he simply lives this truth. He moves through the world without the constant reference to self-image. He interacts without monitoring his performance. He exists without needing confirmation. And sometimes, rarely, someone notices this ease and asks the right question. Not, how do you look so confident? But how do you seem so free? That's when real conversation becomes possible. Not about techniques or practices, but about the recognition that lies underneath all techniques. The recognition that you are not what you appear to be. That your essence is not visible in any mirror. That what you truly are is closer than your own reflection. This recognition can't be taught, but it can be pointed to. It can't be achieved, but it can be noticed. It can't be found, but it can be recognized as what was never absent. And once it's recognized, mirrors become what they always were. Simple tools for practical purposes, nothing more. The search for self in reflection ends because the self that was searching has been seen to be a mirage. What remains is not nothing. It's everything. The awareness in which all images appear and disappear. The consciousness that makes all reflection possible. The light that illuminates all shadows. This light needs no mirror because it is the source of all illumination. This awareness needs no reflection because it is what makes all reflection possible. This is what the enlightened man has recognized, not through study or practice, but through the simple willingness to look away from what he thought he was, toward what he's always been. He hides from mirrors not out of fear or shame, but out of recognition. He knows what he is, and it's not what mirrors show. He's found what he was looking for, and it was never in the glass. It was in the looking itself. If this video has opened something within you, if you feel this recognition stirring, comment "Awakened" below and share what moment in this video hit you the deepest. And if you want more content that challenges everything you think you know about reality, consciousness, and human nature, follow now. Because the journey we're taking together is just beginning. The next video will reveal another illusion so fundamental that once you see it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without this knowledge. Until then, notice how often you reach for mirrors, both literal and metaphorical. Notice the seeking. Notice the checking. And ask yourself, what am I really looking for? The answer might surprise you.